Brian or Paul?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I just joined. How you doing? Hey, Ross. Paul Cohen.
Hey there, Paul. How are you?
Doing good. I told Yanni I joined just in case he needed backup on the Q&As or anything like that.
Not a problem.
I know sometimes it's hard to kind of coordinate all the different buttons and think at the same time.
You know me, Paul. I have trouble just doing the thinking part. So
I didn't want to say that, but that's why I joined the call.
I mean,
I'll start playing the guitar in the middle of the thing. So.
Oh, I wrote a couple of songs specifically for commercial real estate. I mean, I could give them a whirl, but I don't think we.
This is your. Yeah, I mean,
I don't think we have time for
your breakout moment. This is your breakout moment.
Only if Ross will do vocals for me.
We can be backup singers. Shoot up, boo.
Should I hit the broadcast button, Brian? Are we ready to start letting people in?
You're good to go.
I would wait.
Once you hit broadcast, I mean, you got 2 minutes before. People are probably waiting at the homepage potentially, but whenever you guys are ready, really, now or right at 10 o'clock or.
Okay.
I usually do it right on the hour.
Yep.
And then talk and say, give them like housekeeping. Welcome. We'll start in a minute. Just giving people a chance to call in. Make sure Q&As. Buttons, they can use that and then start like right at.
There's a Q&A button specifically for Q&A aside from the chat, correct?
I would use the Q&A and not the chat, but they end up using both. So
okay.
Yeah.
We have about a little over 400 registered users or registered attendees. So hopefully we'll get at least half of that. So around 200, 250 hopefully.
Can we get Ross? Can we just get Ross every week then?
That's okay. It helps when we have our distribution system too.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Yanni, all to you, bro.
All right. I'll give it I'll wait for the hour and then I'll pop the broadcast button and we'll get started.
This is how David Letterman started.
All right, we're gonna open up the channel. Welcome everyone. As people are starting to join the broadcast, we're going to give a couple of minutes to let everybody pile in. Oh wow, we've got a lot of attendees. You really know how to pack them in, Ross?
Well, I would hope that hopefully we got some representation from across TCN as well as others.
I'm sure while they're flooding in.
Yeah. And anytime we get to talk to Crexi, it's a good thing, Yanni.
I hope so. Well, I'm excited for this meeting. I know we had a kind of a chance to chat beforehand, but there's a lot that I'm looking forward to learn myself, and I'm sure we're going to have a good amount of questions too. If you're just joining us, welcome to the Pro Perspective. We're going to give a couple of minutes to let all the participants, all the attendees file in. You'll see that there is a Q&A button on your Zoom screen. If you have any questions, please feel free to use that, submit your questions. We'll be going through them throughout the webinar. There's also a chat function as well. Try to keep the questions to the Q&A button. That way it's easier for us to kind of get through it and address it. We really need to get some like intro music going. for these as we get started, you know? Need to be played in.
Right. And you need a sidekick as well.
Hopefully, I think I have one on this.
You're in luck
Okay.
today because you've
There you
got
go.
this sidekick. Paul Cohen here, standing by to answer and ask any questions that you have.
All right, we'll give it one more minute as people start joining.
So how many of these have you done?
Well,
This
is number
10 or 11.
Okay.
What happened was we were running around the country meeting with brokers in their offices, and then COVID hit, and we said we need something to do to share with people. And Pro Perspective was born. We interviewed a broker in California actually who was doing all his tours online anyway, and so we thought that would be cool. Let's interview him, and then as time's gone on, we've just kind of grown. It may be number 12. We also do these in market specific, so we've done them in. It's
okay.
very good, and we just do them for the brokers in that market, and we interview maybe 2 or 3 brokers. So yesterday we had all the brokers in. Shoot, I don't even remember. I'm like one of those aged rock stars that doesn't know what city he's in. But I think we were in. We were in Miami. Yeah, Miami,
Right.
Florida. We had the head of the Beacon Council. We had someone tuned in from Crexi said it was Miami Ball. Yeah, we were in Miami. The head of the Beacon Council, head of a realtor board, and 2 prominent brokers there. And it was great. It was a great webinar. And so we do them locally, and then we do these of more of a regional nature. So Yanni, I'll hand it over to you, and I'll be quiet until some questions pop up.
All right. Well, I think we've got a good amount of quorum here. We can kind of kick this off and get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining us to Crexi's Pro Perspective, a webinar series that explores commercial real estate today. Today, our guest is none other than the network king of networking, Mr. Ross Ford, President and CEO of TCN Worldwide. I am your co-host, Yannis Papadakis, and very excited to be here with you, Ross. How you doing today?
I am well. Thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction, although I don't always feel that way when I'm at home, which is why I decided I better do this from the office. Got
it. Well, you do have an advantage over me during this. You were able to go and get your haircut, whereas I'm still rocking the shelter in place sideburns. So, I'm glad that you were able to actually join us, even though I know that things are starting to loosen up where you're at. You could probably be anywhere right now. Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. In fact, that's one of the things we've learned in this is that there's a lot of jobs that can be done on a remote basis that people probably didn't realize or weren't confident that they could. Mentioning that, what are your thoughts when this whole thing kind of starts to clear out? Do you think that brokerage offices are going to look like they did before, or do you think that this kind of smaller use of office space and more remote working is going to be something that kind of lingers? Well, I think to some degree it will linger. I think just from an overall standpoint, that's somewhat inevitable. But at the same time, you're going to have counterbalancing aspects in terms of a greater demand for the or rather a lessening of the density. Right. So you may have more of a return to also some more focuses on private offices. If you have a need to have a conference room that's going to have 10 participants and a conference table, that room now needs to be significantly larger than it used to be. So there's going to be, give and take on different sides, but, certainly some level of working from home will continue. It will certainly also, linger in terms of how long it takes, depending on where you are, for everyone to come back to the office. Right. Right. And, I know just because things are starting to loosen up doesn't necessarily mean that people are, rushing to get out and, back into close proximity to one another. I know that I think I heard yesterday that Disneyland in Florida, Disney World, is going to start opening a couple of things back up again, practicing social distancing. But, a lot of analysts feel like, most people are going to avoid that sort of crowd right now anyway. So it just kind of makes sense that we're going to see that across the board for offices as well.
Right.
Well, just jumping into it, today's topic for Pro Perspective is the value of a network. And I can't think of anybody more valuable that we could talk to about networking than Mr. Ford. If you have any questions throughout this, there is a Q&A feature. There's also a chat box as well. Send us your questions. Feel free to ask them. We'll address them as we kind of move along. So first off, give me a brief history of TCN. You know, how did it start? Who was there? What's the origin story?
Sure. The organization really started in probably around 87, 88. And it started out really with a group of principals or the heads of commercial real estate firms for 4 or 5 different firms. And one of those initial members that came in was Richard Bowers. And he was a member. The company was, or the business entity TCN Worldwide was actually incorporated in Virginia in 1989. It's a Virginia non-stock corporation, and its lifetime cycle, like most things that have been around for that, have changed. It started out in the very early phase, and it really was basically just like a country club. There were probably 6 or 7 different member firms, and that grew, pretty quickly to get to the point where it was probably 20 offices or something like that. And it was not, it was basically a network that was really just for those principals. They traded some deals with each other, which, as you and I talked about earlier today, it's always nice when you can, when your phone rings and someone sends you a deal. But they did that, and they traded a little information. And as much as anything else, they used it as a great way to write off 2 exquisite business trips a year. And they went to some really great places, without a doubt. So, and that went on for the first couple of years. And then by the middle 90s, what was happening in our industry was that corporate and institutional clients were starting to do an awful lot more outsourcing. And so the organization changed, and they wanted to take advantage of that. And at that point, the networks, if you will, were one of the real avenues for companies to do that, because they had a lot of offices. And so what ended up happening was that the organization got very involved in the corporate services side, primarily focused on the technology sector. And they did that for several years. And that process was successful in the sense that they represented some clients and they did a lot of deals, but they effectively weren't doing anything to support the members. And that's kind of where the cultural shift happened for us. TCN went from being effectively a real estate company that the members supported and created, to instead becoming an avenue that is strictly focused on the value proposition for the members, the owners of those firms, and their brokers and their agents. And that was really sort of the shift cycle. And then it was as they went through that process that I was fortunate enough to get contacted by a headhunter who was looking for somebody to step in and manage and work with the group. And so that's how I ended up stepping into this role as well.
Right. Now, can you give me some stats on kind of current membership? How where are you guys sitting today?
Right. Well, we've got a little over 60 offices spread across, primarily based in North America, but we also have a presence in Australia and Asia, Dubai, and we work with a variety of firms in different marketplaces. But our primary focus in terms of our overall efforts is primarily here in North America. We've been on a fairly rapid growth activity, if you will, in the last couple of years. Last year alone, we added 12 new member firms. So it was a fairly healthy growth rate, if you will. But we're also really happy that, a lot of our members date back to the, late 80s, as I pointed out, and also the very early 90s. So there's also a tremendous culture of longevity amongst the group. But now, in terms of right now, we're still talking with a number of different groups about joining TCN as well. But obviously right now, we're also just trying to help everybody to navigate the waters, the difficult waters we're in.
Right. So I guess let me ask, how does a firm join TCN?
Well, most of the time, and most of the opportunities that we come across come through our own members where they interact with a firm and obviously make a referral. Now, it's not unusual as well that we get introduced to firms through groups that are in the industry that we partner with or that we work with. Individuals that are able to have contact with other brokerage firms and reach out and go, you know what, a good thing for them would be to join a network. And then they make introductions for us. And I would imagine also to other groups that are out there. That's the primary way. Secondary to that is that, somebody reaches out to us and says that this is something that they're looking for, that they want to be able to change their business model, or that they're looking to try to grow their firm. And that's really what the primary focus is.
I think that kind of gets to my next question, which would be, what would you say some of the advantages that, brokers that are part of the network enjoy with TCN?
There's a couple of different factors, and it partly also comes back to the idea that there's more than one type of a network that's out there as well. So different firms are looking for different things, and that's, obviously we're fortunate that we're in an industry where there are a lot of entrepreneurial, independent groups that are out there. For TCN, first and foremost, what we find are the driving factors is that our organization is focused on sharing information and knowledge first and foremost. And that really kind of falls into three main categories. Our job is to try to work with the firms first, and in terms of trying to help them be more valuable year, to grow their business. We look for firms that are aggressive and that want to expand. And for the brokers and agents that are in all these firms, our job is to give them more tools and resources so that they can compete for business more effectively. First and foremost, an organization and most of the networks are really about competing better in your own market and having a competitive advantage, either as a company or as individual brokers. And then secondarily, it's about the opportunity to just exchange business. In TCN, for instance, I would say 80% of the referrals are about names and contacts and not just about existing transactions. Where it's one person saying, I'm trying to reach Kmart right now because they've got a location that they're about to dispose of. And the fact that you get 5 emails back with people who have contacts at Kmart to make your life easier. That's more of the broker side of it.
Okay. I've got a couple questions that have come in from JB Bond. What type of memberships are available?
In our case, we are a company-based membership. So we're looking at individual firms within a marketplace that are preferably involved in both office, industrial, retail, multifamily, and property management are frequently a part of that mix as well. As individuals, that's not where we focus on. There are other groups that are more of individual networking organizations. And then what we look for is that you've got adequate resources to cover the market. We obviously look for references and people that have done business with you, because we're trying to find firms that obviously we would share our client relationships with and that you would be able to trust. It's not always about being the largest firm or whatever. It's about the type of firm that they are as much as anything else. We look for groups that have various designations within the industry, CCIM and things like that, that are also indicative of a good organization. And then after that, it's really about the leadership and what are they trying to do? Are they going to be a good fit and be a participant in the group?
So you're telling me if a firm has a reputation for being sued by all their clients, probably not a good fit?
It would be safe to say that would not be a good fit, in that we do have a questionnaire, and there's part of it is about that. You're absolutely right.
Got it. Something else I was kind of curious about is, what would you say TCN as a network hits right that some of the other networks miss on?
Well, again, there's different models. And as we talked about before we got on the phone with everybody else, there are some groups where what you're really looking for is a brand identity. And in our case, our members retain their own brand. So what might be valuable to a TCN member may not be the same thing that's of value to someone else. So I don't want to, I don't in any way want to suggest that other choices aren't right choices for those groups. In our case, what really makes us unique within the marketplace is that while the firms retain their independence, and that's really our focus as a group, probably more than any of the other organizations, I think we really do a good job of delivering on sharing of information and knowledge. And, let me kind of give you two examples of sort of how that plays out. Our mission, as I had said before, in terms of the companies, is to be is kind of like a life cycle deal where we say we're going to take you from where you are today, and when it comes to the end of this, whether you're going to sell it, whether you're going to pass it down to another generation, or whatever it's going to be to the owners, we're going to help you to make your company more valuable. We're going to help you to recruit. We're going to help you to train. We're going to help you to evaluate your operations. We're going to share with you what our desk costs are for all the different firms around the markets. I mean, we're really going to deliver on that mission. And for the brokers, we're going to help you to win a couple of deals a year that otherwise would slip through your fingers. So for the owners, one example would be last year we did a network-wide survey in 4 different categories of all the principals of what their cost structures were, the different ways that they supported their brokers, what their headcounts were, all of the functions about managing their business, managing their property management, managing their marketing departments, and managing operations. And we put that all together and shared it with all of them so that they had more of a blueprint and a way to compare what they were doing with everyone else. For the brokers, a similar example is that we've got a database called our transaction database that allows any broker to go in and search. Every member of TCN shares on a quarterly basis basic data about every deal they do. So you can go in and look for an individual client and find people who have relationships with them. You can go into that and search by a specific product type and a square footage and the type of a transaction so that you can show people that you've got the types of deals that you have done that are just like their deals. All of it are designed to be marketing tools to help the brokers win a couple of deals a year that otherwise might slip through their fingers. Right. So that's kind of just 2 examples of what that value quotient could be for the members that are part of TCN. And then obviously, there's always it's always nice when deals get done. Our member in Calgary, Canada, actually has a group that also where he works with that does investment activity, and they have purchased assets in both Denver as well as in Phoenix in conjunction with our members that otherwise those opportunities wouldn't be there. Right. So there's many aspects to it.
Well, it sounds like you're able to kind of capitalize on the size of the network. We had somebody in the chat, Sarah Isker, that wrote in last fall. I was given an offer to join Pacific Coast Commercial in San Diego. They never told me about being part of your network. I rejected the offer and joined Coldwell Banker Commercial due to it being a national platform. In my past life, as you know, I was selling deals at Marcus & Millichap. And one of the draws there for me was the fact that it was a national firm and gave me an opportunity to kind of work coast to coast. Would you say that TCN kind of fills the gap there for some smaller firms that don't have that national reach, that they have the ability to tap into a national network and kind of really work, open up their borders, really?
It does. I mean, it certainly gives you the ability to project beyond your own community or beyond, even in this case, beyond the boundaries of the United States onto a global platform so that you can answer that question and you can take care of that client and you can solve that issue. The other hand, though, as well, it also is unique because as an independent firm, you're also able to reach out to your client and you're able to say, yes, I have the ability to do that deal in New York or in LA or in Dallas, Texas or Chicago or in Hong Kong or in Sydney, Australia. At the same time, as a member of a network, as opposed to a large single monolithic company, if you will, we also have the independence to hire whoever we need to. So this is an opportunity to know that while yes, you hire me, you hire TCN, but also if we have to go to a marketplace where that's not the right choice, we can also hire CB or Cushman or whoever was the right group or another independent to be able to solve that need. And if I can, just really quickly, the comment about Pacific Coast Commercial is great because it's really an interesting story. We had a great partnership with a firm there that I just, to be prudent, won't mention by name, but they'd been a super member of ours. They had generated quite a lot of business, and the time came for that individual to sell their firm. And to move on and to pursue, a different opportunity, so to speak. And we actually had a number of conversations and helped that person in their negotiation strategy. And they sold their firm in that process, and I hope and I think very, very successfully. And that individual provided us the introduction to Pacific Coast Commercial in San Diego, who then became our member, unfortunately, after this broker decided to join Coldwell Banker Commercial.
Oh, hey, there's always time. I used to be a Marcus guy, so
Right.
yeah, that's interesting. Now, I'm curious. So, ordinarily, if we were having this, conversation, we'd probably be in a hotel, convention, or a convention
Right.
center ballroom somewhere.
You're thinking Las Vegas.
I mean, I don't miss it a bit. I'm kidding. I wish I were there now. And for the networking, of course. And I'm wondering, what do you think, how has the digital age kind of changed TCN and how you're networking?
Well, I have to say that I'd like to think, and the feedback that we've gotten is that this has given TCN, and I'm sure other groups as well, the opportunity to really shine for their members, and to have them be actively involved and engaged in a remote environment. Because the unusual circumstance here is not that some people are able to participate in a webinar and it's kind of a, or a Zoom meeting like this, and it's kind of a, it's a maybe thing, but half the people are there in person and so on. Instead, our society just got thrust into this all at one time. So there's a lot of attention. Just like, as you had said, we've got a great turnout today. And that's because, no offense, but I'm sure partly because a lot of them are sitting at home and they got nothing to do. So even with that reality, what we've been able to do is we've been able to work really hard and get a lot of traction and a lot of activity with our members. And so technology's changed it a lot. We were able to work with the principals first to help them go remote, then to help them apply for those that wanted to for either the PPP or the EIDL loan program. And then we switched to starting to work with their brokers and get them going again. Because what we feel right now is that the biggest message that we can convey to the benefit of our firms and to the benefit of our brokers is to get the word out to them now that your business hasn't changed, and that what you do today and what you do in the next couple of weeks is going to determine how much money you make in the fourth quarter and how much money you probably make in the first half or all of 2021, because you've got to cement your relationships with your clients, and you've got a prospect for new clients. And so we've been really working hard with our groups, giving them scripts, talking to them as subgroups as well. We do specialty calls. So technology is, it's been around, but now we're really leveraging it in a way that's much more beneficial. And then also, as we said at the beginning, I'm sure that some aspect of this will continue. I don't think, it's not going to swing where this is going to be the new norm. People are going to go back to work. There's also a tremendous sense that, it's one thing to take an existing office staff that has synergy and culture and make them remote. It's another thing to add to that group and bring in new individuals and do things like that and continue to have that culture if you don't have a physical presence and you don't have a place where they get to know each other. So, we'll have changes, but it's not going to, the industry is not going to go away. And we will adjust and adapt just as always.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that brokers are one of the most resilient entrepreneurs that you can run into. I mean, you mentioned you've got members that have had longevity. I'm sure there's plenty of people watching that used to do business on a beeper, and now they're on LinkedIn, they're on Facebook. So I think that brokers kind of find a way to adapt. It's never an easy market for brokers. There's just, velocity changes. And there's always opportunities in any market. There's always, there's buyers in any market, there's sellers in any market. It's just sometimes the goalpost moves a little bit and you've got to adjust your kick and change the conversation up. And I think that being able to, kind of share what's working and best practices with a network is invaluable, especially now when, things changed so sharply and so rapidly that, now, I mean, what I was hearing, and I've got still a lot of friends that are brokers that over the last 60 days, they've had deals blow up. But more importantly, they've had people in their book of business that have suddenly popped up that, they've never talked to before or I haven't talked to in years that are suddenly re-engaged in the market because things have changed. So I think staying on top of that conversation and sharing best practices is one of the ways that you can kind of turn what's happening now into your fourth quarter. So, I mean, with that being said, do you see tools like Facebook and LinkedIn becoming a larger piece of kind of best practices, especially now that everybody is kind of isolated and socially distant?
Oh, certainly. In fact, I would say that in all likelihood, if you're not active on those social media platforms as a firm, we are as TCN, all of our member firms are, and we actually have subgroups. One of our specialty groups is run by our director of marketing and brand strategy, Claudia Crow, and that's just for the marketing professionals in all these firms. So, and they're all linked together as well, or most of them are. And so you're absolutely right. I mean, all of those aspects are instrumental in terms of the strategy that you have, both in terms of communicating with your clients as well as recruiting for the future. Right. Because the brokers that you're bringing in now, they expect your firm to be social media savvy. And so, for TCN, we need to do it for ourselves, but we also need to be a source of information and helping the individual firms move forward. So that collaborative environment is a big part of what we try to create.
So how are you staying connected kind of with your members right now during this time? Is it largely on Zooms like this? What do you find the best?
First and foremost, obviously by phone. We communicate on a fairly regular basis with our membership as a whole, electronically as well. And we also are doing Zoom calls. As I had said, on average now, what we've been doing is that we have a call in the beginning of the week that is open for all of the brokers. And that will be something that's educational and informative. And in fact, on this Monday, it was a program with all of you that was open to everybody and all of our membership. And then during the week as well, we typically have at least one specialty group call. So in this week, it was the retail group that had a call, and that retail group had we opened it to everybody under the circumstances, but and they had a really great turnout. But they had 5 panelists that talked about what was going on in terms of the reopening of retail in their markets and what they were seeing in terms of lease extensions, rent abatements, the negotiating that was going on in that aspect. So we do those 2 calls that are open to everyone. And then on Thursday afternoons, I have a call that we just do with all of the principals. And we don't typically do that. We've just been doing that pretty much every week through this whole event, so that the principals are able to talk about how they're managing through things. And that's, what they're doing. We're obviously set up also a private Dropbox where they're sharing documents and information, so that we shared, manuals on work from home strategies. And then it was, manuals now in terms of checklists for bringing people back to the office and things along those lines. So it's all those kinds of things.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I think that you kind of already touched on it, but I think that it's important to you can't overstate the importance of how having a network or just reaching outside of your circle can really turn and really, mean dividends for you later on in the year. I know that when I was wearing the broker hat, anytime I would collaborate, even within my own office, even within an office, you've got cliques or groups of people that, guys you always have lunch with, the guys that you're, constantly talking to. When reaching outside of that normal group, you hear about opportunities, you hear about deals and abilities to kind of connect the dots. Something that my manager would do once a month is you just buy, a bunch of pizzas and a couple of beers and throw it in the conference room. And inevitably, people would be putting together off-market deals just by getting people in the room together just chatting. Do you have any, stories or anecdotes on kind of deals appearing within the network that were noteworthy, or at least that you think are worth sharing?
Well, certainly. A great example of a noteworthy transaction, as I mentioned before, is the purchases from Calgary. That have been several properties where the firms in both Denver as well as in Phoenix have picked up not only the transaction side, but then they picked up the management and the leasing. for those properties over several years. And again, that was something that was strictly occurred because of the existence of the network. And in fact, were instrumental as well in helping to set up the investment opportunity, if you will. Another example, just the other day, one of the younger brokers who's working in our Washington, D.C. group had a client that is expanding and growing and needs to do a small retail location in downtown San Francisco, of all places. And so just, actually the phone call came in because they didn't know who to send it to individually. And so we were able to make the connection, and that person now is working on a retail deal in San Francisco to take care of that client. We actually been lucky in the last month. We've had over 14 different referrals within the network. It's not as many as we would typically see, but under the circumstances, it's a nice amount of transaction activity that's been ongoing and fairly consistent. So, the referrals in our model, just from a sense overall, as an organization, TCN is member owned.
Yeah.
So it functions as a nonprofit. We don't do any transaction activity at all. So from our business model, what we look to is that the benefits for being in TCN are based on what they do for you as a company and for agents as a whole. The referrals are gravy. And the beauty of referrals is that gravy primarily goes into the hands of the brokers. Because in most cases, in our entrepreneurial independent shops, the splits are generally more favorable to the broker than they are to the house. So our real focus is in creating the platform for that to happen, and creating the value separately.
Nice. So inevitably I have to ask, how is Crexi? What are you hearing about Crexi from, within your network, from the brokers? Give it to me straight. What's the word on the street about us?
Very positive. We've had the opportunity to expose Crexi to our members and work together with you. You had some very early adopters within TCN who have been huge champions of Crexi. The group in Phoenix, Levros, was an early adopter and has been a big proponent of it. Our group actually
an auction for them right now, actually.
I'm sorry?
I think we're doing an auction for Levros right now on our platform.
I believe you are. That's absolutely right. Similarly, also the same kind of reaction from our group in Harrisburg. And we've got some of the larger markets as well that have already adopted Crexi. So it's got an awful lot of traction. In addition to that, obviously, the desire is for us to see a competitive marketplace in terms of the market information, if you will, and the market availabilities that are out there. So that's a positive thing, and that creates a certain amount of groundswell, if you will. So I would urge you ride the wave and grow. Open up the door with your new auction opportunities as well, and continue your expansion in the lease market. And those are all really positive steps. And I also understand, aren't you starting to do more also where you're working with markets as a whole, and trying to help them to be able to exchange that information?
Absolutely. Actually, Paul, if I can tap you, could you speak?
Absolutely.
Paul already had himself off mute.
I see where this is going. I took myself off mute. I'd just love to chime in. And Ross, thanks for having us on your call on Monday. It was great. The market-wide deals, the strategy there for Crexi is it came out of all places, Omaha, Nebraska, where the brokers got together and said, hey, we're looking for a replacement. We're not super happy with the other firms' platforms that are being offered to us. What can you guys do for us at Crexi? So we put together a deal, and they went for it. They loved it. They love it to this day. And we said, well, let's just roll that out nationwide. So basically, we're rolling it out in 100 cities across America right as we speak. And all the brokers in those markets are like, this is amazing. So we're all going to be on the same platform. All the listings for the market will be there. We'll be able to share comps. And more importantly, we get a great deal and a fixed cost. We don't charge per listing. We charge just a platform cost. So as an owner of a firm, you can now control your costs. You know what you're going to be spending on your platform. It's not related to how many listings you have. And frankly, to be quite honest, you're going to get a lot more leads, be a lot more efficient because of it. So thanks for bringing that up. That was a a plug I wasn't expecting to make, but if you're in a market right now and you know all the other brokers tend to be I don't want to say frenemies is the right word, but friendly competition, right? I think it's the only industry where salespeople, it behooves them to be friendly and cordial with their competitive brokers. But if you're in a market where you know all the other brokers and you can get them rallied up, give us a call. We'll put together a deal for your market. And we're doing it right now in Pittsburgh, in Memphis, in Portland, Maine, Portland, Oregon, you name it.
Right.
We're putting together deals in those markets as we speak. So thanks for bringing that up, Ross. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Paul. I know from experience you'll find that that tendency may be somewhat, shall we say, regional. So, for instance, I know in Minneapolis, they always had a collaborative commercial exchange that pretty much everybody contributed to on an equal basis, and that's just who they are. They're just nice, honest people. And if you tried to do the same thing in Manhattan, it would never work. Not that they're not nice and honest. It's just that they're not nice and honest to each other. So it's just a different model. So that's the way the world works.
100%, Ross. I mean, it certainly is regional, and only someone that runs a network. I mean, I was a broker in Miami, and the brokerage world was what Miami brokerage is. But as I kind of go around the country now, I see I was at an event in Memphis about a few months back, and it was like an awards ceremony. These guys are all like best friends. It's weird. Like the guy at Collier's is the best friends with the guy at CB. They're competing, but yet, they're literally these guys are crying because the other guy got the award. I was never seen anything like it. But you go to Manhattan, they're all about themselves. So I get that. But we're not doing this thing in Manhattan right now, but we are doing it in a lot of these places that you're talking
well,
about.
I will say, I hope that some of our gang from LSL Advisors is on the phone. And I joke, as they all know, in particular, David Green, who's been a friend for a long time. I love Manhattan real estate. I really do. But I'm not naive. That's all.
Yeah.
I'm just
By
not
the
naive.
way, I will say in Manhattan right now, there is a petition going around. If you look at it's on the internet right now. A lot of brokers are getting together. They're not happy with how they're being treated by other service providers. So maybe this is a tremendous opportunity for Crexi to help those guys out, because we do have a lot fairer platform for them to use. So if you're in Manhattan right now, give myself or Yannis a call at Crexi, and then we'll help you out. So there are a couple of questions, Yannis. I don't know if you got to them or not, but I'm
seeing just a couple, but go ahead.
Well, the one I think is, and I think Yannis brought it up earlier, which was about the platform, how you're growing it. But where specifically are the holes? I think there's some comments about the Southeast. Are there some opportunities to join? Ron Osborne, I know.
Right.
Well, he asked how much is it? I don't know if you can talk about costs
Yeah,
involved.
no. You know what? Absolutely. I mean, first off,
great. Go.
No. So okay.
You,
well, first, and first off, so everybody understands, because in this sense, while we're not totally unique, I think maybe culturally we've just been very fortunate, in that everybody really gets along, and it's an open book. TCN really is owned by the members, and it functions as a nonprofit. And we manage and run TCN as a group with a full-time staff of 3, and then we outsource everything else: accounting, legal, IT, et cetera, on down the line, right down to, occasionally using outside marketing groups and things like that to supplement when we've got a lot going on. So we try to be really good stewards, if you will, of our members' money. And the membership dues range from within the North America as a whole, which is again is our core. They range from a low of $4,000 a year to a maximum of $40,000. And the dues are based on the population of the market area served. So it's not, look, in all honesty, it's not a perfect formula, and we recognize that. But at the same time, we've never been able to come up with something that was more equitable in terms of what the market area is and what the opportunity should be within that market, vis-a-vis the cost. And the cost structure, the way that it's done at that level, is also really designed so that if you win 1 or 2 deals a year in your market as a company, as a result of being in TCN, as a company expense, it should have paid for itself. All right. And that really is, I mean, at the bottom line, that's the premise. And that's why we say that you join TCN, and the base function really is to help you grow your firm, to help you be more successful, and to help you recruit, help you train brokers. And if, as a result of all of that stuff that we do, you do 2 deals a year in your own market, chances are we're already a break even. And then if you do get referral business in the process as well, and we generate, close to our annual dues every year in more referral business that goes out to the various members, then you're even ahead of the game. So, that's kind of the way that we look at it. And from a company perspective, the sense is that you make the investment because if my company is worth X dollars today, when I'm done with this and it's time for me to get out, it's going to be X times whatever that number is. And part of that reason is going to be because of TCN. That's the basis.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would just say that there's probably a lot more questions people have. Like if I want this and I want this scenario and that scenario, and I see in the chat you've put, they can email you at rford@tcnworldwide.com with questions, and Ross, we'll get into the specifics. Yanni, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, I think we had a comment earlier in the chat from Richard Welford saying, let's get to Crexi Pro, boys. And, in a lot of ways, I'd say that Crexi Pro is similar. It pays for itself in the amount of business that can be done there. I was, pretty spoiled as a broker in that I didn't have any, allegiance to any other platform when I started doing commercial real estate about 6 years ago in the downtown Los Angeles office. So, for me, Crexi was, it was a new platform to the people that had already been in the game for a long time. But for me, it just seemed like it was better tools. I was using the interface a lot more efficiently, and I was getting a lot of deals done there. So, on the pro front, do you have any kind of feedback from the TCN members in terms of, deals that they're getting done there?
I haven't heard about anything specific, but in all candor, that's not necessarily indicative because I don't get that kind of detail from the individual brokers. What I do know is that they're using it more and more as a research and a business development tool. So it's something that now instead of being something that they used when they had a search that they had to conduct, now it's something that they're using to proactively go and help them to find clients. So it's becoming more of a resource tool. But I'll tell you what, you have, as you know, because we're partners, you have the ability to reach out and through us and share information with all of the TCN membership. So when we finish with this and we do a follow-up piece, why don't we ask everybody together whether or not they have any real life examples for you so that you can use them. I'm sure if you buy them a steak dinner, they'll allow you to post it anywhere you want.
Well, I know we have a lot of shining referrals nationwide about Pro, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds about Pro, but I can speak from personal experience as when I was doing real estate. Most of my listings I sold through Pro. I actually found a surprising amount of listings through calling the leads that I was getting through my Pro account. I think that having that source of fresh active leads through the marketing efforts that Crexi was doing for me, and not only that, having a phone number and email, and on top of that, just for people that were looking at my deals, I think that was the big difference for me. Was as opposed to other platforms where I'm waiting for somebody to bang my door down with an offer, I could proactively reach out to people that are just looking at my inventory and understand why are they looking at it, and that's the feedback that we've been getting across the board as well.
Yeah, I also want to highlight for the brokers that are on that you should take some of the materials that you've got in your information about Pro, as well as Crexi as a whole, but in particular Pro, and use it and integrate it also into your packages when you're going out and you're pitching listings and assignments. Because you really want to be able to demonstrate to that client that you're taking advantage of all of the resources or all of the potential sources to generate clients for them, whether it's a buyer for their property or whether it's taking care of their needs to find space or to lease space. You want to show them that you're going to cover all of the bases. And so one of the things that we always try to reinforce is show and use all the tools that you have at your disposal. So don't just use it in hiding after the fact. Make sure that you pitch it as part of your package.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with that. I think as brokers, we're always looking for an edge in terms of differentiating ourselves from our competition when we're competing for business. I think like any, good agent, when they're, fighting for a listing, wants to know, who am I competing against? And anytime I knew I was going against somebody, even within my own office, that, wasn't on Crexi, I would download the biggest, fattest lead report I could from my pro account, and I'd bring it to the listing lead, and I'd say, here's 2,300 people that I've reached over the last 3 months, specifically from this platform. If the agent you're considering for this assignment isn't using this platform, they're missing out on, a list of people this big. And this is where I'm gonna, win you that business and actually deliver on the results. So I think anytime you can kind of find a competitive edge, it really puts you an advantage, not only to win, but also to deliver on, that, whatever assignment you have. A couple quick questions. What would you say in the industry now, needs to change?
Oh, what needs to change?
What needs to die? This is a tough one. I saved all the.
I have to say the first answer that comes to my mind isn't really fair. Just because it's one of your competitors, and so that just seems, just doesn't seem right. I wouldn't say that anything needs to die. I mean, I guess, in all honesty, probably I have been in this business, all of my adult life, and funny enough, I grew up in it. My brother and I are both in commercial real estate, and we're fourth generation. So my reaction is nothing needs to die, because inevitably it'll change or it'll die of its own. So I don't necessarily think of it that way. Things are going to change though. Things are going to change dramatically. I would imagine that when we finish with this process, as would be normal, there'll be fewer brokers than there were before. The other analogy that we've used is, as both as the owners of companies as well as brokers as a whole, the 80-20 rule is oddly accurate, which is that 80% of the money is made by 20% of the people that are out there. And in the case of brokers right now, it used to be that the 20% of the money that was left for 80% of the brokers was enough to live on. And it's not going to be going forward. So one of the things that we're really focused on is making sure everybody knows how hard they have to work to be successful, so that we keep the brokers that are good, and that then the brokers that just aren't that good, they're the ones who naturally fall by the wayside. So there'll be fewer brokers. This is a great time to grow. This is a great time to pick off talent from other firms, and that'll go on for some time while firms retrench and adjust. Oftentimes, some talented brokers become available, so it's going to be a good time to grow as well. And then the space is just going to get reutilized. Inevitably some things will get torn down or whatever, but this is going to be a once in a generation opportunity for a lot of people, whether you're a broker or whether you're a buyer. Huge opportunities ahead.
I know that I've heard a couple of times now that the Chinese character for crisis is the same for opportunity. And I think that, for people that look at this, like a crisis as opposed to an opportunity, that they're going to find crisis. But I think for those that are looking for opportunity, will find that as well. You already touched on it a little bit, but if you could quickly, any changes or trends that you've noticed from kind of where you're sitting, nationwide, in terms of the marketplace, how brokers are operating their businesses, anything that you think that anybody listening right now should keep their ear to the ground for?
Well, I mean, certainly, as I just mentioned or I alluded to, I think that, you certainly want to be taking a look at the opportunistic buyers that are out there, that have some cash available, because the early transactions that happen for brokers generally, on the investment side, are going to be the ones where you either have a seller rather who is distressed and needs out, or that you've got an opportunistic buyer who's looking for opportunities, and you can satisfy that hunger. And so those are that's some of the stuff that you really want to be taking a look at. And then for the more mature firms and the firms that have a track record of working with distressed assets, now's the time to also be spending time and refining those contact lists and all the rest at the various servicers and other organizations that you have relationships with, because inevitably in this, they're probably going to get some stuff back. Well, inevitably they're going to get some stuff back. So you want to be on the front end of that and not be waiting to the last minute. So those are some of the areas that you want to be looking at.
Interesting. Well, Ross, I know about a dozen people now that have told me they don't have a crystal ball, but if you did, what do you see happening? 6 months, 9 months. When do you think things start to look or feel a little bit more normal market-wise, when velocity kind of starts picking back up again? I'm just,
Well, as TCN, we're talking to a brand new firm in mainland China right now about potentially joining TCN. So oddly, if you had told me that I would even be having that conversation right now, I would have said that was highly improbable. But I think as a crystal ball looking forward as an industry and so on, I think you have hopefully a fairly steady and relatively quick. I'm not a big believer that we're necessarily going to see anything resembling a V or anything like that. I'd be thrilled with a swoop. How about that in terms of an economy? And I think that probably the reality is it'll be faster than, like most things, it'll be faster than half the people thought it was going to be, and it'll be slower than half the people thought it was going to be, or something attuned to that. Obviously, the biggest risk is a second wave.
Yeah.
And just as whether based on health or based on psychology, how we weather that potential storm. But absent that, there's no reason to feel that this market is going to be anything other than favorable. And as I said, the reality of the real estate transaction business and the management business, et cetera, is that really, so long as there's transaction activity, so long as the market is moving, then there is opportunity, and our business has a tendency to do well.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, that's about everything I had on my list. I'll open it up to anyone that has any questions. I'll kind of pose it to the audience now if anybody wants to chime in. Jack Martin wants to know the price for Pro. Jack, we'll get to you after the webinar concludes. We got some custom setup for you. But Ross, I just wanted to say I really appreciate you taking the time out to meet with us and to kind of share your expertise and your wisdom on networking. It's been enlightening for me, and I'm sure for everyone that had the opportunity to tune in as well. Here in
Yannis,
Texas,
thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, we've got Sandy Viveros telling us here in Texas, I think we will see a lot of available leases. Do you think that the strictly sales agents are going to need to kind of open up their toolkit to serve some of the vacancy that we're going to see on the leasing front? Because I've heard that actually from several people across different markets.
Right. In all honesty, that comes down to a different question, really, which is that, if you're an investment broker and the market is difficult and you're having a hard time doing enough transactions, then obviously it may make sense for you if you're the best person for it, or if you're certainly more than capable for it, to take on the leasing assignment for that property. However, if you're an investment broker and your time is better spent focusing on doing investment brokerage, then that's a great example of where you turn around and you hand that business to a leasing individual and you share with them. It's to some degree, you split some of that revenue, because then that's found revenue for you and your time is better spent focusing on your primary core area. That's in terms of a professional strategy in terms of time management, that's what I would suggest.
Nice. Well, again, Ross, thank you so much for your time. I think we'll cut it here. Thank you, everybody, for attending. This was a pro perspective. It's a series that we're going to continue to host here at Crexi. If you have any questions for Ross, one more time, your email.
Oh, yes. It's rford@tcnworldwide.com.
And if you have any questions about Crexi or Pro, you can direct them to me. It's Yannis, Yannis, @crexi.com. Thank you, everybody. And
Yannis, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
yeah, take care.
You're great, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, buddy.
Nice job, Yanni.